Hello and welcome to the Bottle Rocket video episode. This is Video Store Rejects, a podcast where we discuss directors' filmographies and our favorite film franchises. We had started our Wes Anderson and Guillermo del Toro series. I had just started our YouTube page, so unfortunately, when we recorded our amazing Bottle Rocket episode, we did not have a video for it. So this is basically bonus content, an extended version of that conversation. And our guest, we're the host. The guest, or she could be the host because she had a lot of information last time. Sarah Ragsdale graciously came back to talk more about Bottle Rocket, Wes Anderson, and whatever else we get into for this extended cut of our conversation. Welcome back, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And of course, the Jacobs decided and graciously agreed to come back and talk some more as well. So thank you guys.
Probably we have something else going on, but yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, we're stuck at home. What are you talking about? There's a pandemic.
It's not like we're all, staying home during a pandemic. Is if you can't tell, I look like I've been like trapped in my home for a while because of my stubble.
Well, I still have my pandemic haircut, which has gotten out of hand.
Same though. Look at this thing.
All right, I'm just gonna let it go. I'm gonna see how long this pandemic cut can go.
Mm-hmm.
So
then I'll cut it all off and sell it.
Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talked a few weeks ago about the movie, I think you mentioned that Royal Tenenbaums was your first Wes Anderson movie that you saw.
Yes, it was the first one I saw. I didn't get to see it in theaters, unfortunately, but my family, we were really big on like home movies. Like I think this was still VHS as well. Like we would go down to either the Hollywood Video or back in the day, Albertsons used to have the video rental section. And they had like a deal. We could get like 2 new releases and then like 5 like older copies, and we'd load up on a weekend. And I remember one of the new releases, it was my week to pick a new release, and it was Royal Tenenbaums. And surprisingly, my whole family loved it. Usually when I pick movies, they're like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to do it. My mom loved it. Like it was great. But I fell in love with it. And from there, I just like, let me find more of his works, different things.
So what do you like about him or his movies that struck you with that film and then throughout the years with his subsequent work?
Well, what I like a lot is his sense of humor overall. It speaks to me. It's not like in your face. It's not raunchy. It's not raucous kind of a thing. Like it is almost in a weird sense for some of his movies, not all of them, but they have like a family friendly kind of like everyone can laugh at this kind of a thing. Like I watching Royal Tenenbaums with my mom, like there's that scene where Danny Glover just like falls into the pit, and we had to pause the movie and laughed for like 5 minutes straight. Like my mom died. And it was just like that kind of like underlying like subtle humor. It just there's layers to it throughout all of his work. Just like that kind of comedic style, the writing, and the overall aesthetic I love.
it reminds me of British humor a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Like an American British humor,
My family, we love that stuff. So
Yeah, you brought that up before in our audio version of this episode that like his films do have that sense of dry sense of humor that we find in the British comedies. And then you also let us know that Owen and Luke Wilson's dad worked for the PBS affiliate in Dallas, and that they were one of the first PBSs to get like Mighty Python and
yeah, like during my like that was stuff I didn't know initially and loved finding out like in my research for our podcast today or previous podcast. And it was just like jaw drop, like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Like the fact that type of humor spoke to them as well, clearly from a young age. And that people like us as a nation, the United States, would not have the love for British comedies like we do now if it wasn't for Owen and Luke Wilson's dad.
And yeah, I can sense Wes Anderson being one of those hipster kids back before they had hipster kids watching PBS.
Oh yeah, it was cool before. Like I knew about it before everybody liked it, kind of.
When it was like mainstream, yeah.
That's the way I felt. Like, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I want to hear your
No,
hipster experience.
No, that's the way I felt watching like Blackadder and Mr. Bean and stuff growing up. I was like, oh yeah, I'm the only one around here that gets this. And then I found out that there's like a larger audience for that in East Texas. And I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe I'm not as hipster as I thought.
I remember when The Office got really big. I think it was like in the middle of its 3rd or 4th season when it like got huge and everyone decided to start watching it. And I remember telling someone, I was like, oh, well, I watched the British version.
Yeah.
You got to be careful because you'll start fights with people if you talk about which one's better.
I know. And there are things I like more about the American version, which is weird because usually when we remake something, we don't usually do that good of a job.
Well, it's sort of like, have you ever seen the pilot? Because they did not do more. The pilot version of the U.S. IT Crowd.
Mm-mm.
It's not good.
Oh no.
Like Richard Ayoade is the only one that still comes through, but Joel McHale is in it. And then Jessica St. Clair. I love all of them, but like the pilot does not translate well. Like, especially like your Roy is supposed to be a lovable curmudgeon, and Joel McHale does not deliver that.
That's not what he does. He's
no,
not
it's not his. That's not his lane.
No. Yeah, you can find it online, I think, but it's hard to watch.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm kind of glad that they did not remake Spaced. Like that's one.
Didn't they try to remake Spaced as an American version and it didn't get picked up?
Oh, I didn't hear about that. Like I'm a huge fan of Space, and I was like, they don't need to touch this at all. And
I think it's a very American thing that we're like, we see popular things or things that did well, and we're like, we can do that. Watch
what I did.
Well, I mean, it was just like when they did the new Magnificent Seven. I'm like, a remake of a remake? It's like, okay. Because I remember my mom getting mad at me when we watched it. I was like, there's like a samurai movie of this. I don't care. I was like, this is a remake, Mom.
That's the remake. Shut up.
I did like 310 to Yuma though. It was decent.
It was pretty good.
Yeah. I actually think that remake is better than the black and white movie. Yeah, I don't know. Shots fired, maybe.
I'll agree with you on that. There are certain remakes that do outshine like I prefer the 88 remake of the Blob to the original Blob, although the original's great. It's a classic, but the 88 version is just, I don't know, I guess because I like 80s movies.
It's rare that like the remake will outshine the original. Like my personal like reference to going towards that is the original Gaslighting film from like I think it was like 33. Not nearly as good as like was it 44 version with Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. Like that that version with them is like the main version to me. Like they took what the original did and built upon it and made it better.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize there was an earlier version of that movie.
There is like they were remaking stuff even way back then.
We ran out of ideas before we even started.
I mean, technically, The Wizard of Oz is a remake. There was I think a silent version, or
there was. And I'll go with Jeremy Sherlock Holmes. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes.
Through the 80s or through the 80s and early 90s.
Are you talking about the BBC series guy? Yeah, I can't think of his last name.
He's Sherlock Holmes to me. He's perfect, and I will go with that series any day. So that's a good remake.
Technically, The Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart is a remake. So I mean, yeah, It's not uncommon that we've remade movies, and sometimes the remakes are more popular.
But think about all the different factors that go into that. Like, it's also about like the funding that you have, the people who want to be involved, the source material that you choose to use or choose to ignore or alter. Like, there's so many chances to make bad choices. So I think remakes kind of are.
Well, everyone keeps buying into the remakes of Batman, so
Yeah.
True.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, that's a character that can be constantly reinterpreted, right? I mean,
that's true.
we've had James Bonds for nearly 60 years now.
Mhm.
I mean, there's going to be people playing Batman after all of us are long gone. There will
Oh, yeah.
still be
Yeah.
Batmans.
Oh yeah.
Most
And
Hippocrates
in a
take-
weird sense, we could even say Bottle Rocket is a remake of itself.
It is.
That's true, because it was a short film. That's right. That the Wilsons and Anderson made, but they lost funding. And then I guess James L. Brooks and Polly Platt, I believe, or Paula Platt. I can't remember the lady's name that was very
Paula?
integral in getting this movie made. He saw the short at Sundance, right? Sundance,
Yeah,
I believe.
I think it was Sundance.
And helped them get it financed to make a feature length, and even brought Wes and Owen Wilson out to California to finish the script. So what about this movie do you think stands out for you, or why do you love this movie particularly amongst his work? Because there are highlights of his work in here, but it's not as evident as some of his other movies. Like this one, you would have to pay a little closer attention. Like the visual aesthetic, you wouldn't be like, "Oh, Wes Anderson movie," but
Well, what I kind of like is like it's the beginning of all of that. You can see where he started, like the key things that he does in all of his films now. Like you can see where that started, like the play with colors and clothing and in scenery and aesthetics of like architecture, different things. You can kind of see where he was starting to like put it all together, and like how he uses all of that to create, he uses that to help create his characters, give them more depth. He uses that to help push the story, even how he uses that to just create an ambiance within the film that otherwise, like if this was just if Bottle Rocket was just a straight like heist film, if you will, like, and you didn't have like the music, the clothing choices, the car choices, all the little bitty things that he picks and chooses to kind of create this little world, this little bubble, then I don't think it would be as charming or endearing of a film.
and I like that it's even though this is before people knew who Wes Anderson was, because this movie wasn't a commercial hit either. But I like that it's like his take on a heist movie, because like these are unusual characters for a heist film. Like there is, and we talked about this, like he's discussing toxic masculinity, but he's doing it in a healthy way.
Yeah. Like it's like, because when you see a lot of heist films, it's that kind of like, we need the best guy for this job. We need the bright person who can do this. You're like, I'm in, you son of a bee. Like, like it's like the perfect people and like a perfect scenario. And this is the opposite of that. Like these guys do not know what they're doing. It's the, like
It's a cluster.
it's a cluster, and like you don't have to be the perfect version of yourself to pull it off, kind of a thing, or even to make the attempt. Like, and in that sense, like you don't have to be the perfect man to be able to be a rough and tumble, criminal bad guy. Like, nah, you can be that dude who just, out of high school started working for a lawn company and like decide, what, I want to do bigger things with my
Well,
friends.
they all reminded me of people like around here, around East Texas. Because I mean,
Very
they are people around
homegrown,
East Texas,
Yeah.
But like Lindsay said, it's very homegrown. A lot of it hit close to home. Like I've been thinking about this movie, and when Cody was like, "Hey, let's do another show on it," like I just started thinking about it even more. Like I want to go back and watch it again, and I might do that tomorrow. I might
It's
do
so
that.
easy to rewatch. It's so good.
Yeah,
It's
I think.
so and you're gonna find different stuff to laugh at each time that you missed before.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like it. It makes me want to watch go back and rewatch every one of his, which is what we're gonna do. Like I want to watch them now. Like I want to go back.
Marathon.
But I usually try to wait and watch the night before the day of that we do a show, so everything's fresh. But man, just thinking about it makes me want to go watch all of his stuff now, because it's like you said, it's all so lovable and likable and family friendly in a way. But
not
yeah.
all of it. Some
Not
of
all of it.
Yeah.
He
But
does
I
have
mean,
friendly parts to it.
Yeah, there's a
Just,
quirkiness, and I don't know. It's
that's the perfect word for this movie is quirky.
Mhm.
And talking about how you usually see, like, in a heist movie, you've got the safecracker guy, you've got the getaway driver, and I think, Martin Scorsese named this one of the best movies of the 90s, and he apparently loves Wes Anderson, which is weird. But I think maybe he likes this movie a lot. For one, like you mentioned, Sarah, there is a lot of parallels to the French New Wave, not just in the plot that, like, there's not really a plot. We're just kind of following characters around. But yeah, like he does take a lot of technical shots from those type of movies, especially the jump cut that Godard uses in Breathless. And I know that's a big influence on Scorsese, but also he's probably like, oh, this is like one of my movies, but like where the men don't just beat the poop out of each other.
This is a nicer, softer version of that.
it's an artsier version of one of my movies.
It is. It's like the less gritty, more colorful, artsy version.
Yeah. This was made in France. It's one of my movies.
So it's those character types you talk about in a heist movie, like the safecracker and the getaway driver. They're all there. They're just terrible at what they do.
So bad.
And that makes it better. That makes it more enjoyable when everybody's just running around like chickens with their heads cut off because there's nobody's on the same page. I wonder if I'm gonna have to look it up. This has like a Coen Brothers flavor to it.
Yes,
like a comedy of errors type.
Exactly. I was about to say that myself. I said this definitely feels like a Coen Brothers plot because in their movies, it's always people getting in way over their heads with things they don't know how to do. And it just gets worse and worse. I would say the one thing that maybe Wes Anderson's more of an optimistic person than the Coen Brothers is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or he wants happy things to happen to his characters, because I think the Coen Brothers very much live in like this just society that like bad things happen. Well, bad things happen to good people in Coen Brothers movies too. There's a little bit of chaos, but like if you do something bad, like it's gonna come back to you tenfold.
They peed on his rug, and he just wanted his rug back, man. And then it all just escalates from there into this stuff
it's a little bit more karmic in a Coen Brothers.
Yeah, it didn't need to happen. It just they fueled it, and it happened. It just escalated.
I would love to see the two creative forces. I know the Coen Brothers are two separate people, so I guess it would be three creative forces. But like, to see a combination of those styles to make a movie would be really enjoyable, I think.
I don't think we could handle it with our feeble eyes.
We probably couldn't.
Our
probably
brains would probably explode. Yeah.
Like the handful of us in the theater be the only people just like, yes, this is, and they'll be like the rest of the theater just like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Everybody walks out.
It'd probably be super polarizing. There'd just be a few diehards left at the end, just their minds blown, and then everybody else would be like, I don't know what the fuss was about for that movie.
I remember specifically one time I went and saw one of the, I think it was like the second or the third the new Ocean movies, the remakes, which I enjoyed for what they were. Just celebrities saying, won't this be fun? And yes,
Mhm.
I was on board for that. And like, it's the one with Al Pacino in it. And I can't even remember what it was, but my friend and I, we went and saw it. And there was like a group of like frat dudes behind us who were like, this is going to be a great movie. And I'm just cackle laughing at every little nuanced thing Al Pacino's doing in this movie, fully enjoying what it is and why we're there to watch it. And these guys are getting mad at me for enjoying it as much as I am. And literally one of them like perks up and is like, it's not that funny. Shut up. I go, you're missing out, man. Like, this is hilarious.
You're just not that smart.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well,
Our fights in movie theaters.
at this point in life, if Al Pacino is doing anything nuanced, that's
Right?
wonderful.
He's doing good. He's doing that, yeah.
Well, and I did
But I
cackle
mean,
him in,
those
in,
movies are
The
fun
Irishman
for what
a little bit.
those movies are fun for what they are. But yeah, they're not. There's so much going on, like beneath the surface level of all three of those movies.
Mhm.
That, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I was just enjoying
haven't seen
watching
the third
Al
one.
Pacino enjoy himself more than anything.
Having a good time, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't they do an Ocean's 14 with?
No,
like,
they
an
did an
all-women-
Ocean's 8 with
Mhm.
Ocean's
all
8,
female
okay.
cast, which
Yeah.
is it's pretty fun too. Actually, I'm gonna say it's
Yeah.
a pretty fun movie.
Great cast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and surprisingly, the Ocean fan base, I guess, is less toxic than the Ghostbuster fan base because no one seemed to be upset when there was an all-female Oceans movie.
That's true.
I didn't
But
see the third Oceans, and I didn't see the female-led cast. I haven't seen those two, so I'll have to add those to my list.
They're fun.
But I mean, we get hints at Wes Anderson's color scheme in this. Like, they're all wearing that yellow jumpsuit at the end with
Mhm.
that one heist.
Yeah, well, I think we even see in just like their everyday clothes, like what Dignan wears for most of the film, like that kind of retro, like dad 60s kind of pattern shirt. Like,
Mm,
no one wears that, but he's like, Dignan would wear that, you know?
I'd wear it if I
Well,
could
and
find.
he has kind of like a 1950s military haircut too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's just those throwbacks to like different time, different place, but brings he like I just love how he'll use like a shirt to do that, or like a locket, or just like little bitty things here and there to kind of evoke emotion.
The wardrobe was probably the most Wes Anderson thing about this movie to me. Like,
Mhm.
that's what stood out, especially the jumpsuit. I don't know why, but that yellow jumpsuit was like he should have just printed Wes Anderson across it. You know, 'cause that's all I could see in my blinders was like Wes Anderson. I was like, okay, it's Wes Anderson. That yellow jumpsuit, cool. You know,
Yellow jumpsuit.
but yeah, the wardrobe was awesome in that, and I like the 50s clothing. You know, that retro style clothing and stuff.
Yeah, like what I kind of like is like every movie of his kind of feels like it's run through a thrift store filter, and I love that.
Mhm. Oh yeah, definitely.
That's why I really like his movies that take place in a different era. I think period pieces, even though if they like take place in the 40s or the 50s, I feel like that's like a good thing for Anderson because he's already kind of putting his characters like in this retro aesthetic. Like even in Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums, like people are dressed like no one dresses like
No
that.
one
Even
dresses
in
like
the
that.
Okay, and this is the way I kind of look at it. It's kind of like Batman '89.
Mhm.
If you look at the clothing and the aesthetic, it looks like it's set in the 40s, but they've got computers and telephones and
Mhm.
they've got modern. It's like a modern retro look.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, is this supposed to be the 40s or is it modern day? I don't know.
Mhm.
So the same could be said about his. Is like, is this the 70s or 80s or is it modern day? I have no clue, but it's fun.
And I love that choice because then it kind of makes the film timeless in its own sense
Mhm.
and gives it brings itself to a rewatchability more than like something that's very specific for like that day and time. Like some of the stuff that was made like in the early 2000s and you go back and
Mhm.
watch it, you're like cringy watching it because it's so that time period, like what is in now. And then you go back and watch it, you're like, ooh, doesn't age well. But if you make it where it could be any point in time because it evokes different thoughts and things from different time periods, then you can rewatch that at any point in time.
Mhm.
Is that called non-anachronistic when you're not like sure when the time period is or what it's supposed to look like, where you kind of like are pulling aesthetics from different time periods, even if it's modern?
Maybe that's a big
That
one.
sounds
I haven't
correct.
heard.
I don't know. That sounds good. We'll go
Commenters,
with that.
correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah,
They will.
I
They
love
will.
when you can't tell like the era of a movie, even though you know when the movie was made.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
can't tell like what time period is because look, case an example of like saying things haven't aged well. A current franchise that's still going. Do you know what they do in the original Fast and the Furious movie? They're stealing DVD players.
Yeah.
What was
Yep.
the Jason movie that we watched?
I was
That
there for
somebody
that movie.
flipped out a blueberry or a blackberry like Palm Pilot thing,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh no, guys!
Like we're going through The Sopranos, and that started in what 99.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the early styles, and I graduated in 01, so I'm like, man, it's such a throwback. The shirts and the cargo pants and
Yeah.
the baggy clothes and just
Talking to your
I'm just glad we
children
made it out of it.
about what a payphone is.
Yeah, payphones and they had cell phones, but they were all like little burner phones,
The
like
little
flip
the
phones
little
and stuff.
antenna that you had to.
I don't know. It's fun.
Mhm.
It's fun. It's fun watching it, but you're like, man, how did we ever move past that? I'm glad we did.
Another thing I want to point out about this movie is even though it's his first film, his debut movie, and you can tell it's a first film,
Mhm.
it's a lot more well accomplished than some other directors' first films. Like,
Mhm.
case in point, I just watched Pi for the first time this week, Darren Aronofsky's first movie. And you can very much tell, even though it's a very interesting looking movie and there's some interesting stuff going on with the camera work, you can tell that's like somebody's first movie compared to like where he went as a director.
Yeah.
And this is pretty solid. Like, if you had told me this wasn't his first movie, I'd have been like, okay, maybe he did some shorts and some TV or something before jumping into a feature film, because it's pretty accomplished for a feature film. Like, it's up there with two other directors who he doesn't really have a lot in common, but I say this because these directors' movies feel like their own genre, just like Wes Anderson. To me, Wes Anderson is his own genre, and that's the Coen brothers and Tarantino. Like, these directors, like, they feel like their own thing, and all three of them had well accomplished first films out the bag.
Like, I was thinking about this when we had our first conversation about the film, like the idea of the manic pixie dream girl. This is like Wes Anderson is sort of the male version of that.
Yeah.
And like in a non like stereotypical kind of way, like in a way where he makes it his own, I feel, but it's just like this is like his world, his thing. Like I'm gonna be me no matter what. And I feel his directing style kind of takes that and puts it on screen in a way like I know exactly what I want. I know how it's gonna look. I know how it's gonna sound, and I'm gonna keep that throughout everything because I feel like he knows who he is as a person as well.
Right. There was and I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I remember seeing it at the theater, and it may have been a MasterCard commercial or.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about because it was advertised.
They would show it at the beginning before movies, like at the theater, and I was like, I mean, you could tell even his commercials were like straight up Wes Anderson. I haven't watched it yet because it's like 17 minutes and I just haven't gotten around to it. It's a Prada, something he did for Prada a couple of years ago, and it's on YouTube. Just look it up. It's Wes Anderson. He did it for Prada. I've got it saved and I haven't seen it, but I just watched like the first like few seconds of it. And just from like the point of view of the camera, the way it pans over, I was like, oh yeah, that's straight up, Anderson all the way. So I'm pretty interested to see what it's about, which I'm pretty sure it's about Prada product, but
a new fall line, if you will.
Yeah.
The one thing that does make me sad is once Owen Wilson becomes a bigger name actor, he stops collaborating as a writer with Wes Anderson, and Wes starts working with Roman Coppola and Noah Baumbach, and he does still get Owen to show up in roles sometimes. Like he's even going to be in his new film, The French Dispatch.
Oh, man, when is that? Like,
I'm so
soon?
excited about that.
October is when it's supposed to be released to the US. It did come out at Cannes. It's mostly gotten positive reviews, though there are some people that don't like it, but I feel like that's probably people that just don't like Wes Anderson. Like,
yeah, I feel like every single one of his movies, when it comes out, like to a certain extent, it gets reviewed pretty, not horribly, but like not praised. But then you give it creates its own like cult following after a certain amount of time. Like at first you're like, well, it's not as Wes Anderson-y as I want it to be, and then you go back and rewatch it and you're like, oh yeah, this is good Wes Anderson content.
But I kind of miss that Owen Wilson because I feel like, and Luke Wilson too, I feel like they're giving really good performances here, and I feel like that's missing a lot in their later career, and I don't know.
I think they're well, of course, they're both one's doing DC and one is doing Marvel, so they're pretty much set for the rest
of their lives and their children's lives.
Yeah. So, which I mean, I get it as a as a business standpoint. Like you want to be comfortable. You want to set yourself up with something, but surely that would leave time to go and collaborate more. Like,
well, I think it's one of those things because Owen and Wes, like they were college roommates, they're friends, so this was like their first like big project together. I don't know if they set out to always be like a team, like a Coen brothers, but even the Coen brothers right now are kind of like, hey, we're gonna step back and do our own separate things. And so they had this first frontier where they did that. They worked a lot together until other opportunities come up and they want to pursue different things. But I don't think the way that they've done that I don't think there's been any kind of falling out between them. I think once the right idea or project comes along, or heck, even the right amount of time, like we'll probably get more content from them together again.
And was it Owen or Luke that had the health issues here a couple of years ago where he actually tried to kill himself?
It was Owen. It was Owen. And
maybe it's the content. Like maybe he can't do it emotionally. Like maybe it's something that he's got to move on from. I don't know. I mean, I'm not inside of his head, but maybe it's the subject matter of his movies that maybe it's too deep for him now or something. Or I don't know.
I think they even incorporated some of that with the Darjeeling Limited into his character.
Oh, they definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like knowing, like I went and saw that in theater with my mom, and we I remember it being like either shortly after that or like right around the same time. So I don't know if it was, I can't remember the exact timeline, but it was either art imitating life or life imitating art. I can't remember exactly which one came first, but it's definitely addressed to a certain extent in that. And that's why we didn't see a lot from Owen Wilson for a little bit. He kind of went under the radar. And I think it was just that whole like Hollywood thing getting to him. Like
just burnout.
A little bit of burnout, and people just like, he became like the funny guy, the guy who's supposed to be on all the time. And if people, I think it was like, people people were just like, well, you're not as funny as we want you to be. He's like, I don't know how to do that for you anymore. So everyone like at some point needs to like take that time and reassess and regroup and grow into themselves a little bit more.
Well, you had like you, me, and Dupree, and then you had my super ex-girlfriend, which was, they both were doing these funny,
Forgot about that movie.
these comedies that were not, it's like they were just shoveling them out just for something for them,
It's
a vehicle
really
for them to be in. Yeah.
When you're hot, you're hot. I mean, you got to work while the work's coming, and sometimes it's not going to be your best work, but
right.
When you're an actor or entertainer, sometimes your shelf life eventually ends. So you're like, let me work as much as I can while I'm like in demand.
One of my favorite things I saw was the Inside the Actors Studio where they interviewed Matthew McConaughey, which was actually such a good episode because everyone has this perceived image of Matthew McConaughey. He's very smart. He knew.
I follow Matthew. I think he's a pretty smart guy. Now, I'm not saying I would vote. Well, if it came down to it and we had no other options, I would vote for him in a heartbeat just to get.
He's already fictionally polling better than our current governor.
Well, I mean, when people are dying out there because he's making a health crisis political,
right,
makes sense.
But
I didn't really want.
And I'm sorry, Cody. I
was like, I didn't want to get on my soapbox here, but but he's also a very gifted actor. Like people.
In his Inside the Actors Studio, he made a point to be like, you know what? I knew, what I was when I came out. So that's why I was like, I know I have a very limited time where I'm still this good looking, this young, and this much of a romantic lead. So that's why he just churned out all the different rom-coms he could until he hit a point where he was like, I'm not that young leading man anymore. So now I can take the money I made from that and work on passion projects like Dallas Buyers Club and other things like Mud, stuff that like he normally would never get the opportunity to be cast in, but he's now financing his own dream projects. And that's
he was
where
so good in Dallas Buyers Club too.
He was so good in that. And he never would have gotten that role initially. Like they would have wanted someone who was more of a serious actor, not a rom-com leading man. But he was like, I did that so I could do what I really wanted to do and follow my art. I was like, that was so smart.
I mean, you got to pay the bills sometimes. They talked to Michael Caine. Michael Caine, why were you in that terrible movie? Well, I bought a house with that movie. Why'd you do this terrible movie? I bought my mother a house with that movie.
It's like Stallone. He had to do some stag films back in the day before he made it big. And
there's another person who is smarter than people think he is, and he constantly has to remind the world that, like, hey, I'm not a big dumb meathead, because he did write Rocky. He wrote his own film role, he is a decent director. I mean, like, not everything he does works, but he is an artistic person that he doesn't get the credit he deserves. And I'm not saying he's like the greatest actor on the planet. He can only do certain things as an actor. He's not as gifted as, say, a Robert De Niro. But you know what?
I'm sorry, did you see Stop or My Mom Will Shoot? Gold.
You want to know a funny story about that?
Huh.
So for years, him and Arnold were a rivalry, even though it doesn't make sense because they're two different type of performers.
Yeah.
But like Stallone and Arnold wanted whatever script the other one was getting. So Arnold made it like, okay, just tell them that I'm interested in this script and that I want. And at this point, Arnold has done a couple of comedies. Twins and Kindergarten Cop are popular. And Stallone's like, well, maybe I should do a comedy. And that's how he ended up doing that movie, was because Arnold basically trolled him into getting the script.
His performance in First Blood is awesome.
Oh my God. I wish that wasn't a franchise, because that's a more serious movie than people think it is, because it's so different from the rest of the franchise. And I'm not here to poop on Rambo because I like Rambo, but like that script and that performance, it's saying a lot of things that the subsequent films didn't.
Right. It touches on PTSD and what Vietnam soldiers had to deal with coming back from Vietnam, and Vietnam, Rocky, and a movie called Nighthawks. If you haven't seen, you should watch it. All three amazing, and it's like peak performance from him before he started getting into just the action, shoot 'em up, blow 'em up movies. It was him acting his heart out, and they're really great movies. And he can act, but I think he just went into that role. He just started bulking up more and started making more Rockies and Rambos, and kind of with what was safe, or what he knew he could go with.
Pays.
That's what was making the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. People act
he was.
People act like actors have to have this this artistic integrity and like refuse projects, or they're not real artists at acting. But like, it's an occupation, and it's one that people want to make a living at doing. So the art of cinema or TV, film in general, is a collaborative effort, and you're only as good as the worst person collaborating with you. So like, I don't understand like typecasting actors when they're taking the roles that are being called for from them. Like, that's just
Dave Bautista in Blade Runner. He only had like 5 or 6 minutes on screen. If it was that, it may have been a little longer. I don't know, but his performance in Blade Runner was awesome in the beginning. And it turns out he's a good actor. He's trying to distance himself from, wrestling to become more of a serious actor. But Dave Bautista is one of them.
Yeah.
Like, they want to stick him in these roles where he's just the big muscly meathead dude that kills people. But he delivered those lines in which he was kind of the big meathead in that, but he delivered those lines, and he was good in that. I mean, he was good in that little role in Blade Runner.
Getting back to Bottle Rocket and the Wilsons, I think you guys hit on something right. I think due to Owen's, his mental health, and maybe because, even though these are comedies, there's a lot of deep things going on in a Wes Anderson movie, and they're very melancholy, and that might just be a little too much to get in that headspace for him. And you know what? He doesn't have to write anymore. It's just kind of interesting that those first 3 films, he's a collaborator with Wes, and then he just kind of becomes an actor. But he's also blowing up as an actor and being in more high-profile projects.
Well, I had a friend, once the Loki series came out, they were like, this is the first time I've really like appreciated him as an actor. I was like, oh, I've appreciated as an actor from the beginning. Like, back to like Bottle Rocket, I was like, I've known he's always had this kind of in him. It's just most people never saw like Bottle Rocket or his first film or the first few films, like, even though like he's known as Owen Wilson, people forget that he's a collaborator with Wes Anderson, that he comes from this artistic, very specific genre, instead of just like, Spy Hard or whatever it is, like the other like the Drill Bit Taylors and the the old, like the Vince Vaughn like mashups, like there's always
Wedding
been more
Crashers.
to him. Yeah, the Wedding Crashers,
He's not Lightning McQueen all the time.
Exactly. And so like people are like, and the Loki series is the same kind of like thing. I think he agreed to do it because it's very like very stylized, very like they know specifically what they want to do with it, and it reminds him probably of working with Wes a little bit.
Well, and also at this point in the industry, it's not a bad idea to show up in a Marvel project. I mean, That's why you get a lot of these high profile actors, and you're like, why did they waste their time in this movie? But, they're like, oh, it's a Marvel movie. I can do this. People will go see it. It'll raise my awareness to other people. Do you think this movie holds up as one of Anderson's best, or where do you think it falls in his body of work?
I don't know if I would say it holds up as one of his best, but I think it holds up as a blueprint for his own genre. Because I mean, you see a lot of the same people he works with again. You see even the same props at some point are gonna show back up in a Wes Anderson movie. Like, I think it holds up as a blueprint for his stylistic choices more than anything. I don't know if that would make it the best out of all of them, or at least a good reference source, you know?
I think that's exactly what this is. I think it's a blueprint to what his body of work is going to be. We see the visual aesthetics. It's not as symmetrical as it's going to get, but it's there. We have these interesting and lovable characters, even when they're not doing lovable things, and sometimes they're terrible to each other. But we have these sweet, endearing, good-hearted, trying to do what they think is the best thing, even if it's not. Characters. You have I call it indie music, but a lot of times he uses like rock music from the 60s, but he uses a lot of like indie rock too.
Deep cuts.
Yeah, he's a deep cut with his needle drops. And yeah, and I think it's, this is his most Texas movie. Even though Rushmore is shot in Texas, you can't tell that it's Texas as well as this one. Like, we see the Texas burger, and we see, if you're from the Dallas or Hillsboro, like that area, you're like, oh, I know that place. And of course, if you're a local person and you want to be a heist person, you're gonna hire the getaway driver with the person who has a car. They get the job. They have a car.
A little observation. It may not mean much to anyone else, but I owned a VW bus about 8 years ago or so.
I think you mean 11.
Yeah, about 11 years ago. It's been a while. I had a VW bus. Yeah, and those things make the worst getaway cars, man.
Those are not speedy getaway cars.
You're looking at 60 miles an hour tops, 65, 70 if you're going downhill. So, I thought that was funny too, that they chose like a VW bus for their getaway. Anyway, I just thought it was funny. Little observation.
The other thing I love was what Lindsay brought up last time, is that both the Wilson brothers remind her of dogs, and that Owen Wilson is that golden retriever that is hyper and is gonna catch all the balls you throw at him and just wants all the pets. He's that eager dog that comes up to you. And Luke Wilson is more of that dog that you're like, oh, look at you.
He does all those heavy sighs, and you're like, what's wrong, boy? And he's like, nothing.
Did you equate him to a basset hound? Is that what you did? I can't remember which dog.
A golden retriever.
He's either a basset hound, or he's more like oh goodness. He kind of is like your dog, like a big a Great Pyrenees. He's got big eyes, and everybody just wants to hug him because he looks so soft and fluffy and dense. He's like, I've got a job to do. I'm really sad about it.
Or like maybe a sheepdog.
Yes, a sheepdog. Exactly.
And you were talking about them being sweethearts. Oh, I'm sorry, Cody. It just popped into my head. You're talking about them being sweethearts. That's probably I keep saying I have favorite parts in this movie, but
it's just a good movie.
Yeah, one of my really, really favorite parts is at the beginning where he's in the institution and he comes up and he's like talking to him through the mic, and he goes, "Oh, I've got this plan. You're gonna sneak out. You're gonna do all this." And then the guy walks in and he goes, "Why don't you just go out to the front door?" And he goes, "He's put so much work into it. I just
really excited about it."
Even though, and it's a voluntarily place too. It wasn't like he was forced there.
Yeah, he wasn't trapped.
Everyone's humored that friend before that is really excited about something, and instead of saying like, "Why don't you just do it this way?" or "Why don't we just do this?" just be quiet and let them do it their way. They're so excited about it. They're gonna have
He
fun.
doesn't know it's not
Yeah.
gonna work.
It's like when you accidentally say walk in front of your dog and then they freak out and you're like, man, I guess we gotta go on a walk now.
Yeah,
Yep, you said it.
I'm gonna
Or
go
outside.
Yeah. She's not.
Any of those key words that get them excited.
Our dog has one ear up, even though she looks like she's sleeping. It just was like, boom,
Yeah,
just listening for the words we mentioned.
that's why I spelled out OUT. Yeah, she's smarter. She's smart.
But the other visual aesthetic here is Diggum's like yearly plans for them, like with the yellow paper.
Mhm.
That's very Wes Anderson. See details, meticulous. And I don't know if that's him with the handwriting or his brother, because I know his brother does a lot of the artwork for like the Criterion discs and stuff.
That's cool.
But if that's Wes Anderson, that man has immaculate handwriting.
He does.
Speaking of art for the Criterion collection for the Royal Tenenbaums, wonderful DVD. I remember when I first got that at a video store. Matter of fact, it was the DVD. It was in Rusk before they shut down. I went in. I was buying a bunch of DVDs, and I found the Criterion collection, and the artwork is what stood out to me. Like I knew I had seen Royal Tenenbaums. I was like, oh man, I really love the artwork on this, so I ended up buying it. But yeah, I love the art on his stuff.
Mhm.
Another question I have for you, Sarah, is you mentioned when we talked about this earlier that your VHS of this was a screener, which one, I guess that's what screeners used to come in before the days of DVD.
Mhm.
But two, like the video store had a screener or wherever you
Yeah.
purchased it.
I purchased it from a movie trading company.
Oh yeah.
And, because I think when I bought it initially, like it hadn't made its leap to DVD release yet. So like you could only find the VHS copy, and even then they didn't make that many because it didn't do that well. So it was one of those things like I was like just because I still have like 3 working VHS players. So
Oh, if you stole one, I need one. Yeah, I've been looking for one, seriously.
maybe. But it was one of those things like I'll still like randomly like dig through VHS tapes when I'm anywhere because I can still watch them. And I found it and I was just shook because like you can't find it, or at the time you couldn't find it anywhere. And that was one of the reasons why, like, oh, they were not supposed to sell this. It doesn't say it on the outside until you really like look at the tape. Is like not for individual sale, and then like it will just like periodically say that at the bottom of the screen throughout the whole movie.
I've seen quite a few screeners in the day, but they were downloaded, so I know the watermark or
the thing in
like,
the bottom.
this is the property of so and so.
Oh yeah.
You pirate.
Yeah.
My guess is it was someone in the Dallas area who was like a reviewer or something, got it and was just like, toss it.
Well, they send out screeners for award ceremonies, like
they do, because
stuff.
I know a guy that teaches here at SFA that is part of SAG. And
is it Herbert?
Huh?
Is it Herbert? Is it Herbert Midgley?
No, but I know him too.
Okay.
It's Brad Mull, who used to be on General Hospital.
Wow,
he teaches film classes here, and in his office, one time I saw that he had like screeners. I was like, "Oh, you get screeners?" And he's like, "Yeah, because I'm SAG." I was like, "Yeah, you can't let me borrow it though, because I don't want you to get in trouble."
Nice.
Because they kick someone off the academy for letting their neighbor watch screeners.
Ooh. Those screeners are money in some of the groups I'm in, believe it or not. The screeners are big deals because they were like, for.
Well, yeah, you have to be a reviewer or a member of some sort of organization to get them, and that's how they get to see everything. Because some of this stuff, because I don't know how it's gonna work post-COVID world, but like I hate that they do this at award season. Is that they will like put everything out at limited release like the last couple of weeks of December. to get that awards contention, but then they won't go wide till like February or something.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, when people are like, "Oh, I like this movie from last year," they're like, "But it just came out." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's technically a last year movie."
Mhm.
So, is there anything else you want to talk about Bottle Rocket before I ask you a few other things about Wes Anderson?
Mm. I don't know. I mean, we covered so much before. Like, it's just like the little things. Like this last time around that I watched it, just the new stuff that I thought was so funny. Like, I laughed for like a good 5 minutes and annoyed my roommate. Like when he's like admiring her locket and like just like, oh my god, this looks just like you. Oh, you're such a cute little girl. Can I have this photo of you? And she's like, that's my sister. He's like, oh yeah, I can see that.
I also like how he gets so jealous at that other guy that's talking to her in Spanish, and they're probably like not even having like that kind of conversation, but he's like chatterbox that guy was.
That guy, huh? Like this was such a like you can really focus on all the nuances of Owen Wilson in this movie, but I think Luke Wilson did just as great a job on this film. Like the just little details and like the little things that you see will end up being like quirks that he utilizes in his career throughout as well that I just enjoyed getting to like dive into as well.
And let us not forget, it's the first time we hear wow.
Yeah, wow. Wow.
You know, another thing watching it last time that I noticed, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, but if you notice when they're in the swimming pool at the motel, there's like a deep part of the pool where it says like 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've been to a public pool, and I'm not, it could be before COVID, but like in a long time, I don't think public pools have that deep of an end anymore. Like, I think you're lucky to find a public pool that has a 6 foot in.
Mm-hmm.
The Rusk pool has an 8. It goes down to 8 feet, I believe.
Well, that's probably because it was built.
Yeah, built
knows that long ago, but
yeah,
like my
Pre-80s.
apartment complex
Yeah.
pool, it only goes to 5 feet.
I think that's
Wow.
something that changed, like with like
No pun
insurance
intended.
and liability and whatnot. Like,
Mhm.
we don't want a child to be able to drown as easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not to sound old, but you know, back in my day, they let us roam around outside for a whole day. And we
Back
came
in your
back
day.
at dark.
You could
Back
play
in-
with bottle rockets.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
did. We used to have bottle rocket fights, and
I
back in my
think
day,
the
we used to
internet,
shoot each other with BB
is-
guns.
especially fast speed internet, kind of decrease that as we learn more about the dangers of the outside world
Mhm.
is part of why that's changed. And that like entertainment's at our fingertips more so now than it used to be as well.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, you don't have to make your own fun all the time because you just have all these options to entertain you.
I gripe all the time. You can ask Lindsay about how there are no arcades anymore unless you're in a bigger city, and then I'm like, oh yeah, because I got my Xbox over here and the computer and my phone and everything else.
though if you do get a chance, and that's if we ever get back to a decent society again where we
Yeah.
can.
I'm about ready to go Mad Max, but that's just me. I don't
There
know
are
if anybody else
things
will
called
follow.
nickel arcades in the Dallas area that are pretty fun.
Nickelmania! I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
place.
I've
I
heard
went
about
to
it.
one. I went to one for my birthday a couple of years ago, and it was fun. Like they had some really awesome pinball machines that were retro, and it was fun. And
used
like
to go
all
to-
the tokens you got look enormous because it's like for a nickel instead of a quarter.
Right.
Yeah.
I used to go to the barcades in Austin. Those were fun. Like a whole arcade with a bar. Most genius combination ever. But
There's a place, there's a couple of locations in DFW called Free Play. If y'all get a chance to come up,
oh,
you
I've heard
will
of
love
those.
them. You pay like $5-10 to get in, and then all the arcades, pinballs, everything is set to free play, and you could just spend however long you want to. You can go like when they open, stay till they close, one-time entry fee, and they've got like food, they've got a full bar, and it's awesome.
Nice.
I also went to a place called Nerdvana.
Yeah,
It's like
I've been there.
it's a restaurant and a coffee shop on the other side, and you can play like video games while you're waiting for your food.
That's
And
cool.
then the coffee shop is more board games, but
Yeah.
that's really cool. So I think this has been a pretty fun conversation, just talking about why we love Wes and why we think this movie stands out, even though he's probably made better movies. But like you said, this is like the blueprint of his career and like the themes and things he wants to explore.
Mhm.
Like that bromance relationship and dysfunction, but creating a family that maybe isn't always your physical family, but finding a family that works for you, that is accepts you for whatever kind of quirky retro person you are.
Right.
Are you excited about the French Dispatch? I mean, I guess you are. If you're a fan, I guess we all have to be, right? I know I am. It looks
Yeah, I'm excited.
It looks amazing, and it's shot in black and white, so like he's hitting my hipster nerd film nerd self.
Check. Yeah, no, I'm very excited to see that when it comes out. Like, I haven't really ventured out into theaters too much with everything going on, but that one I will definitely like fully mask up and like mask, shield, maybe like hazmat suit just to go watch it in the theater.
Yeah, especially since that one won't give us a streaming option. I'm sorry, Denis Villeneuve, or however I say your name. I'm not trying to be mean to you, sir, but I will probably be watching Dune at home on HBO Max. Even though that pains you, but I'm sorry because our country doesn't want to get healthy.
We're probably not going to make it because we don't. I mean, we've got 3 kids and no sitter, and I'm not going to go without my wife. You know, the last movie we saw, no joke, was the last Star Wars movie. So it's been a while, and I need my fix. I need my theater. I need to be in a theater. That used to be my church. That was my place of peace, and it's been a while. So,
but
yeah.
The French Dispatch hasn't even opened wide, and he's already planning his next movie, which I think it either takes place in Spain or they're going to be filming it in Spain.
Of course.
I'm excited to see Tom Hanks in this too.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a big Hankster fan, and I'm excited to see him in a Wes Anderson movie. Just, I don't know. It just seems like it's going to be an odd fit with Hanks. Like I've seen everybody else, but with Tom Hanks, it's just
Margot Robbie's in it now too. Another actor he hasn't worked with before.
Yeah, that's going to be weird, but I think it's going to be great too. So it's going to be interesting to see the way he utilizes their acting talents.
But I'm pretty sure everybody else has at least been in one other Anderson film before, if not multiples.
Right.
I can't remember everybody that's involved, but I know
So many people.
Bill Murray's there, Tilda Swinton's there, I think Adrian Brody. I believe Bryan Cranston and Jeffrey Wright were announced.
Wow, yeah.
I can't remember who else. Probably just about everybody that's been in a Wes Anderson movie.
At some point or another.
I certainly hope it's a better endeavor for both him and Hanks than it was when Hanks worked with the Coen brothers, because that one didn't quite come together for me. That was their Lady Killers remake.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one was a bit off. That one was a bit off for me. I mean, it was okay. I think I only watched it once.
I've only watched it once. I enjoyed Hanks for what he was trying to do, but I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's sort of like like Tom Hanks has his own kind of like producer style, director style, acting style, and Coen's have theirs, and it's like they both tried to like compromise, and it didn't really give you what you wanted from either of them. And I hope that's not the same thing with Tom Hanks and Wes Anderson.
Yeah, I hope not. But I always like to see directors work with new people. And I love Wes Anderson. And, you know, I'm glad Jeffrey Wright is coming back to work with you. I know he did a voice in, I think he did a voice in Isle of Dogs. I know he's worked with Jeffrey Wright in something.
Yeah.
But Wes, don't be afraid to cast actors of color. It's okay. You can, you know, you love your color palettes. So, I mean, cast some diversity in there. Mix it up a little.
I mean, he does. It's just the same people he usually works with. Like, people of like Indian and Asian descent, he works with quite a bit.
That's true. I just know it's something he's been criticized for by people.
I mean, I think we should criticize everybody for not doing that. But I think there's other directors who are more problematic than him in that aspect.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, you know, from what I can tell, he seems like a perfectly nice human being. I haven't heard any horror stories about Wes Anderson as a director, as a human being, which is good. I like when somebody's work I like isn't problematic because, yeah, Tarantino may be able to make good movies and write good dialogue, but he's kind of a problematic dude.
Kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, some feet, you know.
Well, I wasn't even talking about his weird fetish. I was just talking about him as an individual.
Yeah.
I just had to bring
how
up
he treats actors is not the best.
Yeah, he and Uma Thurman, the way he treated Uma Thurman.
Do you mean how he almost killed Uma Thurman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we don't like him.
That's why.
I'm gonna break topic one more time before we finish because I just learned this story and I thought it was hilarious because we just did James Cameron movies before we started Anderson and Del Toro. So there is a guy who is a stunt cameraman because I guess they're cameramen who do the stunt scenes, get into like whatever they're doing to film the stunt scenes. And there was this guy who did helicopter shots and he was doing a helicopter shot. And you guys know the T2 sequence with the semi truck and all that. And then the helicopter. Cameron did not tell them they were going to be doing that when they got up there to film. And this guy had stopped doing stunts for a long time. And this was like his first time back. And they said once they finished the shot, they landed the helicopter. They said he got out of the helicopter. He walked up to James Cameron, punched James Cameron in the face. And he said, I will never work with James Cameron again because that man is crazy.
I bet James Cameron would agree after the punch to the face. Good for him. He did what we all wanted to do.
You know, as problematic as James Cameron is, he probably like respected that. Like, even though it probably hurt his ego, he was probably like, you know what? That guy had the gall to walk up to me and punch me in the face.
Nobody punches me, but I'll let you slide.
I deserved that one.
I wish what's her name from The Abyss could have punched him in the face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mary.
If anybody deserved to punch him in the face.
Actually,
you know, I think
women deserve to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
But we'll go,
I think that was part of why he was like that on T2 because The Abyss had been a flop. He was like, this is my last time to make or break. If this doesn't work, I'm done as a director of doing what I want to do. But that's no excuse to like not tell your stunt people what you're doing.
No, I was watching the Netflix series, The Films That Made Us. And I won't mention which film it was, but if you watch it, you know. And I'm not a fan of this film, so I won't mention it. But like, they seem to like go out of their way to talk about how like, well, all the really good shots only happen because we just kind of went for it and didn't like tell people we were going to do it. And me as an actor sitting there like, you guys effing suck. Like, I would have quit. Like,
well, now I'm not. Now I got to know what movie it was.
Well, we have to go back and watch the films that made us and find out.
But
I don't know, like if it's the more recent one because I just watched the Back to the Future one.
I haven't seen the second season. We watched the first season, but I haven't seen the second season. So.
And I only saw the Christmas ones before. No, the Christmas ones, the Die Hard and the Elf and the Nightmare Before Christmas, where I learned that apparently Tim Burton has big feet. I didn't know that he had, because apparently he kicked his Doc Martin into a wall over something.
Wow. And the fact that he's wearing Doc Martens too, that dates that movie.
I'm sure he still wears Doc Martens.
Probably needs an orthopedic now.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about, either Bottle Rocket or Wes Anderson related, Sarah? Or something we should bring up?
See. I don't know. We covered a lot. It'd just be me going like, wasn't that good? I liked that a lot.
But thank you so much for coming and basically just having an open conversation with us just about the film and Anderson as a director himself. And just so we have some content out there before the audio drops. So I appreciate it, because people will probably be, if people are actually following each episode, they'll be like, why isn't there a Bottle Rocket episode? You guys just don't like Bottle Rocket for some reason?
Wait a minute.
For those Wes Anderson diehards out there, we do like Bottle Rocket quite a bit.
Yeah.
So here's your Bottle Rocket extended cut conversation with Sarah, who was nice enough to come back and talk to us again, even though she already did a great job weeks ago, and we had notes and details and nuance. We talked this movie up, but it's a really good movie, and if you're a Wes Anderson fan, you should check it out. If for some reason it's missed your radar these past 25 years.
Yeah, if you're a Wes Anderson fan, if you're an Owen Wilson fan, like if you've just decided you love Owen Wilson now because of the Loki series, go back and see where he got started. Go back and see where Luke Wilson got started. Like, if you like James Caan, get in there a little bit.
If you're a fan of
wow.
Yeah, go back and hear the very first wow.
Well, wow.
You know?
Great.
Wow.
Or if you're just nostalgic for bookstores that aren't Barnes and Noble, watch Bottle Rocket.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, before we go, Sarah, is there anything you'd like to plug, or if people want to follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Ragsdale Sarah, and we still have the second seasons of both How Not to Summon a Demon Lord and Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. New episodes are coming out weekly. You can stream those on Funimation.com. And thanks so much for having me, guys.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming back and agreeing to do a video on this, even though it's not the same thing. But I was like, you can't recreate a conversation you had, even if you wrote everything down that was said. Something else is gonna happen. Someone's gonna think of something else or a different topic to talk about. This is just bonus content, and thank you because of my technical errors and learning how to do video and audio at the same time. So
it happens to the best.
We're growing and learning and starting, and since our editor has taken a hiatus, we're trying to just do some videos right now instead of backlogging all the audio. We don't want to create more homework when we don't have to.
Which, by the way, if anybody listens to this today, happy birthday, Jim.
Yes, happy birthday, Jim. I hope you're having a very good day. And if you want to watch Bottle Rocket, check it out. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can come to it at your own time.
All right.
Chris, Lindsay, you guys got anything you want to talk about or plug? Or
I mean, I have lots of things I could talk about, but just Bottle Rocket, no, I think that wrapped it up. Excellent film. If you want to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, Check us out at Video Store Rejects. Other than that, I think we're good. Lindsay, you have anything?
Oh, if you're a Texan who's having a hard time finding things to be proud of about being from Texas, you should watch Bottle Rocket.
Yeah.
It's a little Texas love letter that has nothing to do with the giant flaming shit show that's happening right now.
Exactly. We could all
Matter
use
of
a
fact,
little
I'm
boost.
going to go back and rewatch it because I think I need a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to say one thing for our fans or members, whatever you want to call yourselves. If you're fans, I appreciate it. If you just like the page because of the content, I still appreciate it. I don't mind you coming in and commenting on things we post that you don't like something, but don't make anybody else feel bad about what they like or don't like.
Because that's not who we are.
Bingo.
It's perfectly fine to disagree, but we can have a civil conversation. You don't like something, you don't like it, it's fine. But don't make someone feel bad for getting enjoyment out of something, because what I think is a travesty of cinema, someone else might think is a masterpiece. And that's fine. It's all subjective. We're all here for fun.
I'll be the first one to admit that I have done that before. Like when it comes to, I'm sorry, but the Twilight movies, they're so easy to make fun of, but there are people out there that like those movies and it does something for them and it makes them enjoy cinema. Vampire your heart out. Werewolf your heart out. It doesn't matter. If you like it.
I can't stand Twilight and how terrible it is for message to young people, especially young women.
Fundamentally, yes.
Right.
And what it does to the vampire and werewolf lore. But you know what? Even if someone grows and decides they don't like it, or they just love it for the trashy fun it is, that's fine. But it also might introduce them to something better too. It could be a gateway thing, just like anything else is.
Right.
So I just want people to be civil. You know, you can say you don't like something, but just don't be mean to someone just because they enjoy it, because things change. And maybe that's me getting older, because Chris, I've been guilty of like getting upset about things I don't like either.
Yeah,
and I remember once yelling at someone for wanting to watch Escape from LA before watching Escape from New York. But I think as I've gotten older, I've learned that, you know what? It's fine. I just don't like that. I don't like it. That's just
it's like with the new Star Wars movies.
What order do you watch them in?
I am a Star Wars fan through and through. I have been since, I mean, it's in my baby book. My dad took me to Return of the Jedi, and I sat there like in the first week of being born, like he had to watch me. So he really wanted to go see Return of the Jedi. So that's what we did. It's in my blood. I'm a Star Wars fan. Did I agree wholly with the films that Disney put out? Not entirely. I could throw some hate that way, but I try not to, because those movies
the more fans the merrier.
Yeah.
The more people being brought joy by something, that's what we want to direct our energy toward, because it's a better use of it.
Those three movies introduced a whole new generation to Star Wars, and I can't, as a film buff, I can't shit on that. Excuse my language. I can't do that. Like, I can personally. I have my issues, but I'm not going to ruin it for someone else.
Whether you like the new Star Wars or not, and that's a whole other topic for another day.
But I still watch them. That's what I'm saying.
But I think the good thing that these new Star Wars movies have done is that it's shown more representation for people who love film and sci-fi. It's not just white boys up there being represented. And that's important to people, especially when you don't see yourself represented in the things you love. So they did that, and I'm all for that. The same thing with Doctor Who. I'm glad, you know what? We need more of that so more people can feel included in the things they love and be like, oh, yeah, I can do that too, or I could be that too.
Yeah. I mean, it's also that sort of thing, like, yeah, you're not going to love it because it wasn't made for you. You have all the previous work. That's all made for you. These are made for other people to enjoy. And if you don't like that, get over it.
You didn't like it, but just be nice to people
Yeah.
And don't make them feel bad for loving something because you love something that they probably think is stupid too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm
I
going to say about it.
yeah, I had to. I almost got very heated. I tried to keep it civil, but yeah, we'll stop there.
Well, again, Sarah, thank you so much. I know you're a busy person, so I appreciate you penciling in some time for us to just BS about Wes Anderson.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I mean, there's not a lot of people who want to hear and sit and hear me BS about Wes Anderson, so thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
And anyone who listens to this later or who might be listening to this now, I didn't see any active viewers, but that's fine. I'm not demanding viewership. Watch at your leisure. Be safe out there. Be kind. And please, 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 regardless of your opinions on vaccinations or anything, just at least wear a mask when you go out in public.
Be
Just
safe.
Yeah.
And
And that's all I'm going to say.
Please leave the horses' medicine alone. Please leave it for the horsies.
They need it.
They
They're
need
all
it.
full of worms now, you guys.
And
Enjoy
don't-
the rest of your weekend, everyone, and thank you for watching.
One more plug. I'm sorry. One more plug. Wednesday night, Adam's Family Values, probably around 11ish. You're welcome to join us. Anybody listening, if you want to be a guest. I know it's late, but deal with it.
Yeah. We're wrapping up our summer movies, rolling into spooky season because we're ready.
We are gonna totally just go right into October. We talked about it. And
September is pre-October. That's the name.
yeah,
of the month.
we're there's so many horror movies that we want to fit in and discuss this time around that we're just gonna start in September. So get ready because there's gonna be a lot of spooky.
Alrighty. Take care and thank you for watching.